The most important story in the country right now is Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter. On the outside, it can seem like something that's actually not important or marginal. Twitter is not the largest social media company. It's certainly not the only social media company. But I think what's really clear, and has been even made more clear under Elon Musk, is that it's the place where elite discourse happens. It's a place where political narratives are hatched and nurtured and achieve either dominance or achieve submission in this marketplace of ideas, in this realm of public debate. And more than anything, though, I think what Elon Musk's now month-long takeover of Twitter has revealed is how power works in almost every American institution. If we think of Twitter for our mode of analysis right now as the center point, and then you see all of these spokes in this hub of all the other institutions, government, corporations, media, censors in the private and public sphere, public health, narratives on culture, Congress, politics, all of these things that are circling around this now central focal point have been clarified. We see exactly who has power. We see exactly how power works, and we see how Elon Musk's takeover is starting to shift this apparatus, is starting to disrupt and starting to interfere with the old status quo. And so the first question is, what was the status quo ante? What was, in other words, the status quo prior to Musk's takeover? And I think that the picture that we see revealed through the reporting, but also revealed through the Twitter files, which have been released by Matt Taibbi, Barry Weiss, Michael Schellenberger, and others, is that the long march to the institutions, this idea that left-wing activists have spent the past 50 years training cadres in the university, and then deploying them through the bureaucracies, not just of the universities, but also of government agencies, K-12 schools, and even large private corporations like Twitter, is absolutely what's happening. The key person here is the former head of trust and safety, really the kind of undisputed, or rather the secret king of Twitter decision-making. The person who is the arbiter of who stays, who goes, what is permitted, what is not permitted, a man named Yoel Roth, who is really the perfect embodiment of the long march to the institutions. This is someone who got a PhD in communications from UPenn. So you have an elite Ivy League degree in a very non-elite and really in many ways useless field. Communications is kind of the laughing stock of rigorous academic fields. And then more specifically, what did he study over his long tenure in academia? He studied himself. He studied and did autoethnographies on his use of gay sex apps like Grindr. That is really what his PhD dissertation was based on. And he was a study and a disciple of queer theory, gender ideology. This idea that the purpose of study is not to develop knowledge, but to subvert heteronormative hierarchies. So looking at Judith Butler and Gail Rubin and other queer theorists that I've covered in previous videos. And so you take someone who is credentialed, you take someone who has an expertise in a left-wing ideology, and then somehow magically he uses these the incentive system and rises to the bureaucracy at Twitter, where he actually has a position where he can control public discourse. This is, of course, not a neutral arbiter. We know that previously from who gets banned on Twitter, what kind of words and language are permitted on Twitter, and what kind of people and language are not permitted on Twitter. And then it really is blown out of the water with the smoking gun documents that have been revealed in previous weeks. But Yoel Roth is the embodiment, really the perfect symbolic representation of the credentialed ideological striver, taking what was once a subversive outsider ideology that is now nothing of the sort. It's actually very much a insider ideology. It's credentialed by the Ivy League universities and then really fits well into the incentive system even in corporate America. So it's this pseudo-transgressive ideology that is then the key to upward mobility within not just bureaucratic structures in the public sector, but also now in the private sector. And so we see through these releases, through the behavior that has been revealed, exactly how the bureaucracy at Twitter enforced left-wing ideology and then tried to cover it with these surface-level policies that were really platitudes. Trust and safety can mean anything because, as we've seen in the Twitter files reveal, words are now violence. This is critical race theory, this is queer theory, this is an idea that has been bandied about in the university since the 1990s, now taking hegemonic position in a major tech platform's official policy. Well, if words are violence, and words that contravene a kind of queer normative discourse are ramifications or expressions of a tendency to exclude, or a tendency to oppose, or a tendency to be expressions of hatred, then those are now de facto violations of trust and safety. And so you have this ideological underpinning of a surface level kind of corporate platitude boilerplate at the top that then really results in a de facto, rather than a kind of written policy, but a de facto policy of anything goes. Yoel Roth decides. What he does like, what he doesn't like, is what stays or what goes. And so this was the status quo ante, and the next step in this is enter Elon Musk. This is really the inciting incident in this drama. This is where everything starts to turn. And what I think of as Elon Musk's gambit here is something I outlined in a speech at Hillsdale College a number of months ago. This idea of the siege of the institutions, that conservatives, or in this case, a kind of radical centrist outsider, Elon Musk, have to start aggressively attacking and laying siege to these captured institutions if there's any hope to change them, if there's any hope to restore full, free discourse in the United States. And this is exactly what Elon Musk has done. I mean, he down to the theatrics of it. He made the kind of ostentatious entrance into Twitter as the new ruler. He brought the ceramic or porcelain sink into the building, letting his followers know, let it sink in. In other words, start actually thinking about what this means. This is not just a corporate raider takes over a company for financial purposes. No, this is actually an ideological takeover of an institution that controls discourse, and Elon Musk will be ruling it with a new set of rules. And what is this? What is this conflict that he's setting up? I think in some ways, with maybe a little bit of hyperbole, you could think of it as two competing ideas of how institutions are going to work. You have, in one sense, the great man theory, or the robber baron theory. The idea that corporations are ruled from the top by a single great individual. This was certainly the case in the 19th century, early 20th century. You had, the Rockefellers and the Carnegies and all of these great kind of heroic figures that dominated industries and shaped the country, even reshaped physical matter to their will. And then what you have at Twitter is the long march to the institutions, or really the rule by credentialed midwits. People who are anything but great. People who represent this middle strata of credentialed ideological striving that take prepackaged belief systems from universities. They pretend that there's some kind of elite wisdom and then govern accordingly. From that middle strata of bureaucracy that is not even really productive. What do these folks do at Twitter all day previously? Well, they're kind of bandying about ideological material and content and discourse among one another in Slack. They're going down to the cafeteria to have the catered meals. They're maybe taking 15 minutes to do a down dog and a savasana in the corporate-sponsored yoga room. Then they're taking an Uber to have happy hour with their colleagues after a meeting or two in which nothing is accomplished and much is discussed. This is certainly true at most tech corporations. I've had the privilege through friends and also my wife of observing the inner workings of many of the big tech corporations in the Seattle region. And it's no surprise internally that many people do maybe a good 5 to 7 hours of work a week and then are kind of slacking off the rest of the time. A lot of fat to be cut. And so what did Elon Musk do immediately? He really brought all of the pain in one fell swoop, following dictates of Machiavelli and others, to say, if you're going to do something difficult, do it all right away. And so he eliminates 50% of the workforce, and then through attrition and chaos and drama and kind of a reduction in force through people voluntarily leaving, giving them a kind of ultimatum. You're going to stay under the rule of Elon Musk or you're going to go. Another perhaps 25% of the workforce disappeared. And so there was this moment a few weeks ago in which all of our friends in the left-wing pro-censorship media said, Elon Musk has gotten rid of 75% approximately of the workforce. Twitter's servers are overheating. Everything is going to collapse. Twitter will be catastrophically broken and will disappear from the digital world. They really believe that the 25% of Musk diehards could not even operate the servers. Almost this idea that they're throwing cold water in the server bunkers, trying to make sure that they don't spontaneously combust and implode. Of course, this was not true at all. This was a myth driven by people with no technical skills. If you talk to actual full-stack engineers and server architects, they'd say, well, Twitter can run, perhaps with some bugs, perhaps with some hiccups, with a skeleton crew. It is not the most complex software product in the world by any means. And so he cuts 75% of the company, again, approximately, further revealing that the rule by midwits, the rule by credentialed ideological strivers, is not the rule of engineers, and is certainly not the rule of a company that is hungry and innovative and driven to create something innovative, rather than something that has been really crushed and layered and barnacled by the bureaucracy, which then gets taken over by the minority of employees who are the most aggressive ideological elements. And so this is a great coup, because it's done two things. One, it's liberated the discourse. It's revealed the corruption of the previous censorship regime. And then it's blown up the myth of productivity. That's what Elon Musk has done in the past month. It's really this three-part siege that has gone over the barricades, that has laid waste to what was previously there, and then revealed what was good, what was bad. He's really put everything on a dividing table. This is what matters, this is what doesn't matter. This is what is, this is what isn't under the new leadership. But of course, this isn't the end of the story. It's not the simple narrative of a rising success, like you might see the kind of Horatio Alger narrative, the great man narrative, the robber baron narrative in the previous discourse, let's say, the previous telling that was popular in America, let's say maybe even 100 years ago. No, there is a reaction. The midwits were mad. The bureaucracies were furious. And then you saw the entire constellation of power in America start to swarm Elon Musk. And I think of what happened to Elon in the past month is really the swarm effect. You have left-wing captured bureaucracies that operate under this shell of euphemism, that try to operate invisibly. But once you kick the power structure, it starts like a kind of like a swarm of nasty wasps or bees, starts to swarm you, starts to make you uncomfortable, starts to puncture you, tries to actually rattle you and change what you're doing. And I've experienced this at a very writ small level a number of times. First, in some of my early political work in the city of Seattle, the swarm, that small local swarm, very disorienting, very difficult for someone who hasn't been through it. And then in my work on critical race theory, a bigger national media swarm, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Vox, whatever, all of the kind of left-wing corporate journalist swarm against what I was doing. Again, difficult, challenging for someone who hasn't been through it, but really ultimately vanquishable, surmountable. I think that the journalists who imagine themselves very powerful in this environment are actually not the ultimate power holders. In fact, they're actually a function of much broader powers, much deeper powers, much more formidable powers. And that's what you saw activated with Elon Musk. You've seen the furious response, not just from our pro-censorship corporate journalist class, but you've also seen the Congress, the Senate, the financial services, the SEC, all of the arms of the state, bureaucracy, both the legislative bureaucracy as well as the permanent administrative bureaucracy under Joe Biden, start to now look for vulnerabilities, start to now see, well, where can we investigate? Where can we push forward? I even heard some left-wing lawyers speculating that Elon Musk might have lied on his immigration application, and perhaps it's possible for the government to deport him back to Africa. This is the kind of fevered mind and desperation of an ideologically captured bureaucratic structure. And then you see the left-wing activists, Media Matters, the ADL, the SPLC, all of these pressure groups also starting to push, starting to really first meeting with Musk to try to insert pressure from the inside, and now retreating and now starting to pressure from the outside. And so what do you have? You have tech, media, government, regulators, activists, all trying to reestablish control over the discourse, trying to push Twitter financially, push Twitter legally, push Twitter bureaucratically, push Twitter reputationally. And they're trying to all orchestrate this swarm to do two things. One is to crush free and open discourse. Again, the kind of post-bellum or the post-siege rules. They're trying to reshape them, and if they can't reshape them, trying to shatter them. But they're also trying to make a statement to others. The swarm shall not be opposed. The swarm, once activated, will ruin your reputation, will ruin your financial livelihood, will ruin your ability to speak freely, and then will try to crush you in the realm of public debate and public bureaucratic management. And so the real question, as we're in this drama, is twofold. First, I think the lesson for conservatives, and then the question for conservatives is, do we have what it takes to emulate this siege of the institutions demonstrated by Elon Musk? Conservatives, unfortunately, in many places, especially in red states, serve as caretakers of left-wing institutions and caretakers of left-wing bureaucracies. So there is a public university system in red states like Tennessee and Florida and Texas that is a left-wing dominated, ideologically captured landscape in which red state legislatures and governors kind of manage and caretake, maybe do some changes around the edges, but ultimately the conservatives serve as trustees of left-wing ideological and bureaucratic hegemony. Elon Musk has said, no, another course is possible. That conservatives can actually go and lay siege to institutions, reform them, fire or eliminate entire cadres, entire departments, and then try to get things down to the essence and implement new rules, new culture, new ideology, new hegemony. The question is if conservative legislators and political leaders have the courage to do it, have the intellectual capacity to do it, and then have the fortitude to resist the swarm. The second question, I think, is, does it take an extraordinary personality, someone like Elon Musk, someone also like Donald Trump, who have the personal wealth and who also have unique personality structures, which enables them to resist this swarm? I think Elon Musk has talked about his own workings of the mind. He's a very different thinker, a very different person. Donald Trump, of course, has a famous personality. They called him the Teflon Don, and then I think he has what might uncharitably be considered personal quirks that allow him to really block out those signals, to really fight against them with the pure force of personality. And in both cases, let's be honest, Elon Musk and Donald Trump, this is a pro and con. It has advantages and disadvantages. These unique personalities have strength where they may be able to resist some of these pressures, but also weaknesses. We've seen those weaknesses exploited with Trump, and we'll likely see some of them exploited with Elon Musk. But ultimately, I think we have to look at both figures as functional figures that have disrupted institutional control and charted a path for another way.